Hey everyone, welcome to another week of student ministry. I am so excited because we're starting a new series today, actually talking about the life of Joseph from the Bible. And his story can be found in Genesis 37 to 50, so in the very first book of the Bible. And so he plays a really important role in the history of the nation of Israel and making sure that it actually becomes a nation down the road. And so Joseph is a really important guy, and we can learn a lot from him. Now let me give you a little bit of background. Joseph was one of 12 sons who all had Jacob as their dad. Now Jacob's story was pretty complicated. So he fell in love with a woman named Rachel. And so he worked for 7 years to marry Rachel, but he was tricked by Laban, his father-in-law, to marry Rachel's sister Leah instead. Like, crazy shenanigans happened on their wedding night. It was wild. And so, but Jacob loved Rachel, right? That's who he worked for her father to marry. And so he worked again another 7 years to marry Rachel finally. And these are sisters, right? And so this is like some TLC crazy things going on in this family. And to make it even more complicated, there were 2 other women that he never married, but were servants of Leah and of Rachel that he also had children with. And so get this. Rachel, the wife that Jacob loved, was not the wife who was bearing Jacob children. And in that culture, that was like devastating, right? Rachel couldn't until all of a sudden she was pregnant with Joseph. He was like the miracle baby. And Jacob was crazy about him, right? Sounds like a pretty messy family. And can you imagine how all of the other brothers, all of the other 11 brothers, felt about Joseph? They hated him a lot. And to make matters worse, Joseph then has these dreams. And so we're going to pick up the story in Genesis 37, 6 through 8. It says, he, Joseph, said to them, his brothers, listen to this dream I had. We were binding sheaves of grain out into the field when suddenly my sheaf of grain stood upright, and your sheaves gathered around mine and bowed down to it. All right, crazy. So Joseph has this wild dream about these sheaves of grain. His brothers, all older than him, are bowing down and worshiping him. So how do his brothers react? Well, his brothers said to him, do you intend to reign over us, little bro? Will you actually rule us, pipsqueak? I just added that. And they hated him all the more because of the dream and what he said. Can you imagine the tension in this family? 4 moms, a dozen boys. Now the favorite son goes around telling people that he's having visions of everyone worshiping him. Come on, Joseph. Somebody want to tell him that that's not a good idea? But Joseph wasn't acting like he was concerned about any of the ways that he was affecting his family. You see, he's behaving like all of us do, hyper aware of how we're being treated, not really aware of how it affects anybody else. And so Joseph's family was all the same way. Joseph's brothers could see the whole situation, how it affected them, the unfairness, the jealousy, the injustice. I mean, Joseph receiving this great robe from his dad that was a signal of his favoritism. It was like a brand new car given to him, and all the other ones had hand-me-downs, like mom's ancient minivan. It just wasn't right, and they knew it. See, the truth is that even though these few verses are more than just some strange dreams and a coat, it is really about the tension in the family that was never dealt with. And this tension was left to grow and plays a huge role in the rest of Joseph's story. But before we get there, let's ask this question. Why is this story still relevant to us today? Well, it's to show us that family has always been complicated. And so what you're going through, Joseph can relate. To teach us to pay attention to how our actions affect those around us. And to remind us that the tension, that if it's left unresolved, it is not just going to go away. It is always going to escalate to something bigger. And so next week, we're going to see how Joseph's escalated to a biblical dumpster fire kind of situation, all right? But until then, what do you think? What could everyone in the family have done differently in this situation? Well, Joseph, he probably could have started to see himself as part of the problem and had some awareness about the favoritism placed on him by his dad, right? His dad probably could have recognized that favoritism and started treating everybody with the same sort of love and care. The brothers, maybe they could have chilled out just a little bit and not hated their brother because of their jealousy or held grudges about him. See, and everybody else probably could have ignored Joseph's dreams and not allowed their own insecurities to control them, right? So all of this brings us to our bottom line for tonight. When you don't know what to do, pay attention to how you affect your family. Pay attention to how you affect your family. Later on in Philippians, in the New Testament, Paul is writing, and he gives us some really great advice that helps us kind of understand how we can affect our family in a positive way instead of just unconcerned or unintentional or accidental, right? And so he says, Philippians 2, 3-8, "Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, but rather in humility value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of others. In your relationships with one another, have the same mindset as Christ Jesus, who, being in very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness, and being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross." Imagine for a second if everyone in your family took this verse to heart. What if everyone paid attention to how they affect everyone else? What would it do for your relationship with the people who live at your house? What would it do for the general level of tension or peace at your house? What if it started with you?